political thinker Carl Schmitt says that the state of exception is when in a society the usual laws and regulations no longer apply. Something so grave is happening that you must abandon order as usual. The one who can demand such a state of exception is the sovereign, who stands in that sense above the law. And the sovereign, to Schmitt, is the concept of God turned political. The Christian God is precisely the power that can set the law aside and demand the state of exception as a dictator. So not a very nice God concept. God to Schmitt is all about power from above. But I thought we'd turn Schmitt's thinking against himself and apply it to what happened in Stonewall, 1969, at the time for the world's first Pride Parade, to queer both God and Schmitt in one throw. The Stonewall riot was when the queers of New York, now we're talking people who were so marginalized in society at the time that many of them were homeless, had neither jobs nor homes, simply because of their sexuality or gender. Drugs and alcohol were ways of getting by for this group of people who had just no status in society. The Stonewall Inn was one of the few bars that would let them in, so that's where they gathered, but also where the police regularly came for violent and humiliating razzias. In June 1969, these people just refused to take it anymore. After, I think, not much more than a week or two of growing protest, they simply stopped accepting the usual humiliation and violence. The Stonewall uprising was to get to the queering of Schmitt when these people created a state of exception. They set aside order as usual, refused to accept the law according to which they could be arrested for their identities. They just kept on walking side by side despite the hate and disdain. When I looked into the story, I just can't see where they got the power from. It just doesn't make sense that after the way they had been treated, they still had the power to keep on walking, that they were sober enough, but they did have that power to demand the state of exception and so to create the starting point for today's LGBTQ rights. The only way I can explain it is by disrespectfully turning Carl Schmitt against himself and say that the divine power, the sovereign force to set the law aside, came from within creation itself at Stonewall. The sovereign power, God at Stonewall, were nothing like the dictatorial Christian God. No, they were a divine force from below. They were a force that could set aside the law and truly make room for creation, for the true multiplicity of creation.